Welcome to the Whiskey and Wisdom Podcast, coming to you from the Cargo District Recording Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina, where we discuss the most fascinating topics of life. I'm Tyler Yaw with my co-host, Chris Kellum, and each week we interview a special guest to learn how they acquired their wisdom over a glass of whiskey. So, sit back, pour yourself a glass, and enjoy Whiskey and Wisdom. This week, we bring on Chelsea
Hollis,
and we plan on discussing how she runs a successful business while being a wife, mother, and another child on the way. But first, Chris, what are we sipping on?
All right. So Tyler acquired this lovely bottle of Oak and Eden Bourbon Spire. I was like, I've never heard of this one before, but it looks like it's based out of Texas, Lone Star State. I think it's kind of cool. This thing is actually pretty interesting. They do your basic white oak charred barrels for 2 years. Just give it a nice color and flavor. It's just really classic. The flavor note should be a little bit of, this is floral and honey. A little vanilla. Good. I feel like they put vanilla in a lot of oak inspired drinks. But yeah, let's check it out. Cheers.
Cheers.
Obviously, I am not partaking in this part of the podcast. Just want to put that out there.
Right, yeah. It's just so anyone who's not watching it.
Put that in the intro.
Smooth. It does have that sweet vanilla. Yeah, I'm starting to get the caramel out of it.
See? We have to do more research now so I can better educate people as well as ourselves.
Yeah, and when you bring it up, you can actually start tasting the flavors a little bit more too.
It's supposed to be good with coffee and chocolate. So
that's probably why it tastes so good right now too. I have coffee as well. It's early in the morning, or it was when I first got here. So, all right. But Chelsea, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I am first and foremost a wife and a mother. Mm-hmm. My husband's name is Jordan. We have a little boy named Silas, and we're expecting a baby girl in August. So
that's awesome.
Very excited for that. I grew up in New York, moved to Raleigh when I was about 14 years old, went to high school there, went to both ECU and UNCW.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So
both of us. There we go. So he went to ECU, I went to UNCW.
Okay,
so that's pretty funny.
Yeah. I loved ECU my freshman year, but got very much sucked into the culture of Greenville and you go in as a freshman, you don't realize it's not normal. That's not really how college is, and then I came and visited here and I was like, oh, okay, this is more like my speed. Yeah. So I ended up transferring. My husband went here too, but we didn't know each other in school. We ended up meeting in Raleigh on Tinder.
Oh, wow.
7 years ago, and then found out we lived on the same street and everything in Wilmington, just never knew each other. So we always had a dream of moving back here. I started off my, using air quotes here, adult career in the fitness industry and started my photography business on the side. Grew that, shooting mainly weddings and couples. And today I primarily work with motherhood, family type of photography work. And I coach photographers to grow their businesses as well.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of the quickest synopsis for you.
For anyone who's listening, the way that we got in contact with Chelsea was through our third episode with Brittany Limeberry, and she spoke very highly of you, not just on the podcast, but even before and after as well.
Oh,
and
sweet.
The thing that's funny about that is she's doing the whole couples and weddings and branding photography now too. Yep. And she says her weakness is the motherhood and baby side. Mm-hmm. So, which makes sense though, because she hasn't gone through that process. Is that something that you noticed too, that you got more involved on the motherhood side after you became a mother?
Yeah, 100%. And first of all, thank you, Brittany, if you're listening. I love you. Yeah, so I obviously was engaged and going through the wedding process myself and felt very much enthralled in that world. And then my husband and I got married in September of 2019 and immediately got pregnant after that. It wasn't planned, but it was the best surprise. And so immediately your priorities start to shift and your mindset starts to shift and you think about the future a little bit differently. And then COVID happened and it just really threw a wrench in everything. It was going to be my first full year, full time. I had so many weddings on the calendar. Everything was just chaos. I had brides calling me panicking left and right about what to do. I had to make all these really tough calls within my business on how I was going to handle these situations. And while I gave everybody grace and like for the most part, everyone was very, very understanding and we worked together really well, it made me just take a deeper look into my purpose and my why behind my business, right? I was like, you know, what am I bringing to the table that's like different than any other wedding photographer? And like, what do I truly love about this portion of what I do? Do I love just shooting really beautiful details in these extravagant weddings, or do I think there's potentially like something bigger here? Right. And I just couldn't put my finger on it necessarily. I just couldn't figure out what was truly setting me apart, other than like I valued the relationship with my clients, which most do, right? And having gone through a wedding recently myself where like it didn't go necessarily how I thought it was going to. Like my husband ended up being really sick on our wedding day. Oh, no. And while it was amazing and I don't take it for granted, it just made me realize, wow, I spent so much time stressing over like all these details, and really our marriage has been so much sweeter. And what's coming on the other side of this is so much more important to me now. And it was harder to empathize with all of my clients freaking out over like guest count and bridesmaid dresses and, you know, things like that. And so it really made me second guess things. And by the time I had my baby, I already came up with this whole plan about how I was going to shift my business to be more motherhood focused and really document this journey that I realized was so fleeting and it's fast. It goes so fast and you forget so much of it so quickly. And it can also feel really isolating for women too. So I wanted to create an experience where my clients can not only have their pregnancy journeys documented, but also like supported as well. So.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. With my wife being pregnant right now too, and due any day, by the time this episode comes out, my wife would have had the child by now, but hopefully
for her sake.
Yeah. I don't think I'll be living in the house. It doesn't happen by then. But just knowing how important that is for her too. And before I saw what you're doing on Instagram and whatnot, I don't think I'd really seen a photographer that was really branding themselves like that. So what kind of process did you go through to get to that point and to try to find your why? What were some of the steps that you took?
That's a good question. I guess I don't know that I have anything super tangible in that way. It was just, I went through a lot. My first experience being pregnant, especially in 2020, where like all the things you thought you would get to experience didn't necessarily happen that way. And so I tried to make the most out of it. And I found that all the things that I was dealing with, I found a lot of healing through my online community and other moms who had like been through and walked through some of the same things that I did. And so I just really leaned into that and told my story and shared others and talked about the journey openly. And I think it attracted mothers and one day wannabe mothers to just kind of jump on board and follow me. And I've had people who originally started following me for wedding photography when they were engaged, who have now booked me for one of my Milestone collections because they have like followed that entire journey since then. So that's been really cool. And I think just having like someone know that you're not alone. I also, and I'm trying not to get too much on a tangent here, but I also went and got my doula certification so that I could kind of add that into the experience. Like I'm not necessarily going to be at every single one of my clients' births because not all of them want that. And I also am only one person, physically can't do that. But I just wanted that education and like emotional empathy to be able to walk them through that entire process. If we're going to be working together for the entirety of the 9 to 10 months and after, I can talk them through some of the problems they're having at their newborn session or some of the fears they might be having about birth at their maternity session and stuff like that. So I think that's where I kind of drew people in and differentiated myself was that portion of it, because anybody can offer portraits, you know?
Sure, yeah.
And a lot of wedding photographers do that because it's a way to retain their clients. And that's kind of the next natural step, you know?
Yeah. And it shows how important it is for you as well to go through that doula process and to say, hey, you know what? This was important for me. I want to share it with you as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some people might have thought like, oh, or maybe this is just a mindset block that I was having. I didn't want people to think like, oh, now she's on to the next thing. She's just going to be a doula. She's all over the place. But I saw it as like, no, this is just another layer and like another way that I can continue to serve the clients that I'm already serving in a new way. I'm not like leaving photography by any means.
Right.
It's just added another piece to it.
Building onto that puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I am a man who knows zero about life besides my own. What's a doula?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people think it's this like hippie, crunchy term for like people who have home births, but really hiring a doula is bringing on an kind of outside support person who can help you and your partner like walk through preparing for birth, through the labor process, through some of the postpartum process. I think what a lot of people don't necessarily realize about birth is, one, you have a lot more options than you think you do. And two, especially when you're birthing in a hospital setting, the nurse and the doctor are only in there with you very like sparingly throughout the course of it. Like labor can last days, literally. And so it can be a lot of pressure for the partners to know how to comfort the birthing mother during those times. And so my role just kind of can enhance the father or the partner in a way that he can just be dad, husband, boyfriend, whoever, and I can take care of like the rest, getting them water, doing hands-on physical practice to help comfort the mom, just put their mind at ease at like what's normal at different stages, walk them through what their options are in terms of interventions that might come up during the birth process and things like that.
For our listeners out there that are men, which is the slight majority of them, I highly recommend a doula. So second pregnancy, first one did not have a doula. Literally chicken with a head caught off. Yeah. I had absolutely no clue what was going on. And this time around, I even do have an idea. And that's really all it is. It's just an idea of what it's going to be. And we did hire a doula for this one. And just the constant contact that the doula has with my wife in general is valuable because, and she's obviously had kids and stuff too. So she's had that experience that they can share together and help her on a different emotional level that I can't. And also we've had a few couple hour sessions where she comes in and says like, hey, this is what the process looks like on paper. And for a lot of guys that are analytical, that helps a lot to kind of see like it broken down like that. And then also exactly what you said, there's a lot more options out there than just the nurse or the doctor saying, hey, this is what's going to happen next.
Exactly.
And just having a idea of that there's more control during a process that can feel like is out of your control. So yeah, I give you a lot of props for doing that as well too.
Thanks. Yeah, my husband is the same way. Like we did have a doula our first experience, and now anytime we have any friends that are pregnant, he's like, hire a doula, trust me, like you're gonna want this. And I think some people get the notion of like, well, people do it without doulas all the time, and they don't. It's almost like an ego thing. They don't want their role to be, what's the word? Like they don't want anything to be taken from them, which I totally can understand that perspective. But once I explain to them, actually, this is more of what this looks like, they're like, oh, okay. Yeah.
The funny thing about that too is, because I've heard those as well, it's like, oh, well, people do it with just a doctor in there all the time. Well, before doctors, what used to happen before is you just had support people around you all the time, helping you support you through the process. So really what we're doing now is less natural than having a doula there.
It is. And I won't get too much. I can talk about this stuff all day. I won't get too deep into it. But when I was pregnant the first time around, up until a certain point, I was very much just like, I'm just going to go in and go with the flow and I'll get an epidural and it'll be fine. And I'll just do what I'm told. And then the more I started reading and researching like the physiological birth and what some of your options are and some of the things that can arise, I was like, oh, there's actually a lot more to this than meets the eye. Yeah. And I think a lot of women go into that with full trust, which is great if you have that in your provider. But sometimes things come up where you, at least if things don't go according to plan, which most of the time they do not, you know what your options are. And then you can feel like you were the one who made that best call for yourself in that moment, and then walk away feeling more positive about the birth, even if it didn't go how you like hoped.
Yeah.
It just helps with like birth is a huge deal, and a lot of women process it for the rest of their lives, to be honest. And so if we can prevent any trauma around there from just having that education and like removing that anxiety going in, that means more to me than things going according to like what we had originally put on their
Definitely
birth plan, you know?
Interesting. So moving past the birth, I was looking at some of your photos, Instagram work.
Yeah.
I was going to say Photoshop, and I'm like, I mean, I'm sure it's not all Photoshop.
I don't.
It looks like you get
right.
yeah. I'm like you get great angles, and you were talking about milestones in your photography setup. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. So I ended up trademarking my signature offering last year, which I was encouraged to do by one of my business coaches. Yeah. Smart. It was kind of scary going through that process, but I'm glad. So what it is, essentially, my Milestone collection is a customizable like portrait experience that captures a family's journey to their baby. So I have several different collection options they can choose, but essentially they can have a announcement session to announce the pregnancy, the maternity session, birth if they so choose to have that support, and birth photography, a newborn session, and then a family session a little bit down the road when baby starts getting like a personality and starts to smile a little bit. So they can do that within like the first 6 months. And at the end, they get a beautiful heirloom album of the entire journey from start to finish. So it's kind of like a professional baby book that shows the whole story from start to finish. That's my favorite part of it. Is getting to do that at the end. So yeah, they can choose from a minimum of 2 sessions all the way up to like the full experience. And so all of my Milestone clients, I call my Milestone mamas. And that's how I ended up starting my podcast as well. That's a whole other topic, just to add to that support piece. But yeah, it's been really, really fun.
That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah. I wish I knew about that beforehand, before my wife was about to have her child now.
Maybe if there's number 3. Or
I don't know about that. We'll put that on hold for right now.
I know. My husband says the same thing.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see how we feel about 2.
Exactly.
We'll go from there.
I always hear number 2 is a little bit more difficult than the first.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Quite a few people are like, oh, just watch out. Number 2 gets you.
Yeah, I guess I could see that from the baby personality and needs. I think the experience as a whole is going to be so much easier going in with just perspective and experience, you know. But physically, your time is a little more split.
Exactly.
So.
People with 3 kids, like my mama, my sisters, I'm like, why?
I'm one of 3, so maybe that's why I've always like pictured us having 3.
Yeah.
Same with my wife. Yeah.
And yeah, my husband's one of 3 too, but I think he just thinks that, okay, well then that means anytime we travel, we have to have a room for 5 instead of a room for 4. And he's the one that's very forward thinking and logical and thinking of finances, and I'm not. So
we're definitely going to bring your husband on too, because he sounds very like kind of down my lane.
Yeah, I'm sure he's very much your speed. So we agreed we'll just put that on hold and we'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah, that sounds good. So how is it for you being a wife and mom and running your businesses? How does that time management go?
It's hard. It's probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I think initially, like my transition into motherhood made it kind of like forced me into getting really like setting really strict boundaries because I really had no other choice. But I came back from maternity leave and had to shoot about 8 weddings within a couple month time span at 8 weeks postpartum because of COVID, you know, like everything that I was supposed to shoot while I was pregnant got pushed. And so ordinarily I would have given myself a lot more space and a lot more grace for that season, which I now plan to do the second time around, but I didn't have a choice. So I kind of just had to put my head down and do it.
Right.
And that initial mindset of just realizing you do not have the freedom you had before, your priorities are completely different now. It really forced me into being more okay with saying no to things that I knew just were going to stress me out further. I started to get really mindful about the types of things that I was taking on and things like that. I ended up hiring an editor to help me with some of that, which I still very much have my hand in. She just does like the rest of the busy work for me when it comes to that, because weddings take hours upon hours to,
I can imagine,
to go through that editing process. And then really just like admitting that and accepting within yourself that you can only do so much and you cannot do it all, and it's okay to ask for help. So I ended up for a while just working during nap times and at night and whenever the heck I could. And then we finally got some regular childcare to come over. And once he started napping a little bit less, those naps start to like dwindle as they get older. And so I was like, okay, this is not as easy as I thought it was. Looking back, I thought the early stages were so hard. And now I'm like, man, he slept a lot though. Like it was really hard, but it was a lot easier to get work done when he was like a month old versus he's 20 months old now. So we're constantly chasing him around the house. But yeah, it just really boundaries, saying no, asking for help, outsourcing when you need to. And I also try, this doesn't go perfectly every week because my job has so many different like avenues to it that I'm not able to set like a really strict schedule. But some of the things that I do is I only take portrait sessions on certain days. I only take certain types of portrait sessions on certain days, podcasts on one designated day of the week. I try to get like certain tasks done on a designated day of the week and really just go from there and allow it to ebb and flow with the rest of our life. I had to learn that there's really no such thing as perfect balance. I think I was striving for that a lot in the beginning. Yeah. And then I realized, no, it's never going to be clean cut and perfect. You just have to make the most of the time you have, work with what you have, and everything else it'll happen eventually. But this season of life with my baby is fleeting. So that always comes first.
Absolutely. Yeah. How do you find that balance for you with like mom time versus business time? Is there like, do you schedule out the mom time too? Or is that something that just comes first no matter when it comes and everything gets scheduled around it?
Pretty much the latter. Yeah. I have 2 days a week where I have a sitter come and she comes in the morning and puts him down for his nap. So I can work from about 9 a.m. till 2-ish, depending on how long he sleeps. So I know I have those solid days of like, all right, that's going to be the day I crank out X, Y, and Z. I try to take time for myself. So I work out at like an early 6 a.m. workout class 2 or 3 times a week. So I could at least take care of myself in that way. And if I don't have it on the calendar and I don't have someone waiting on me, I'm not going to do it. So I need that accountability. And then, I try to be as present as possible, but there's always going to be the days where like I might have to be on my phone a little bit while he's playing, or take a call while he's awake every now and then. But I really try to keep it separate. And more recently, I actually decided Wednesdays were going to be my day with Silas, where I don't put anything on the calendar at all. And we just go do fun things, go to the park, go to the beach, go get ice cream, go for walks, whatever. Yeah. And it's nice to just have that little break in the middle of the week to come back to my why. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a really good idea. Thanks. To take a small turn a little bit, I know that you've been kind of focusing more on coaching with photography. What made you want to make that pivot in your career path? Or not really career path, it's similar. Yeah. But make you want to start doing that a little bit more? A few different reasons. One is just I got asked a lot. Like I get a lot of questions, and it's such an honor that people even look to me for that type of support. But throughout my journey of like getting into this work in this field and creating this career for myself, I spent so much time and so much frustration, like trying to figure it out on my own. And I wish that I would have just had somebody or some type of resource to be like, no, this is how you do it. I promise this is going to make your life so much easier. And I probably could have accelerated things much quicker than they did. I'm glad it didn't, because now I have that perspective and those resources to help other people. But I kind of always had that in the back of my mind. And so even my first year, really like diving deep into photography, I hosted my first workshop because I just thought, even if I'm only 1 or 2 steps ahead of someone attending this, I'm still 1 or 2 steps ahead of them. And we all have something valuable to bring to the table and to share. And that's just something I've always loved to do. I went from personal training and teaching fitness classes, and I still kind of wanted that like community-based part of my job. So I started offering workshops, which I did once a year. And then obviously COVID hit. So I started doing things a little bit more virtually. But when I became a mom, it made me realize, okay, I can really only exchange so much of my time for money anymore too. So this kind of felt like a natural progression for just what worked for my schedule and being able to work a little more from home than necessarily going out and shooting all the time. So I hired a business coach last year who kind of helped me refine all those offerings and really start pivoting in this direction. So it's been really cool.
Yeah. With kind of what you were saying there reminded me of one of our guests a couple of weeks ago, Raylan Morris, who was on, and she talked a lot about mentorship as well. So tell us a little bit about your business coach too, and how that has played into your business now and how that's impacted your life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. She was so helpful that season. I felt like, especially as a like multi-passionate entrepreneur, sometimes all of the ideas and the thoughts that are constantly in our head can just feel really chaotic, even if they actually aren't. And so I was feeling like, oh my gosh, I have so many different pieces of my business. I need someone to just look at this from an outside perspective and give me some direction, some clarity of like, all right, here's how you should structure this. I was also still trying to balance like nap time hustle and all of that. And so I was like, I just need you to help me and tell me what I should be designating the majority of my time into, how to refine my offerings and things like that. And so we worked together for a good 12 weeks, and she's actually become a good friend of ours and moved to Wilmington recently, which has been cool.
That's awesome.
So I still go to her for advice here and there. But yeah, she really just helped me to streamline the chaos that was in my mind of how to even get my point across in my marketing and things like that, because I talk to photographers and I also talk to mothers who are potential portrait clients. It's 2 kind of separate populations and audiences, and I needed a little bit of help finding the balance between those 2. So I think it's even coaches need coaches, right?
Absolutely.
Because we're doing this thing on our own, and it's easy to get in our head and like only see things from our own perspective. So just having someone to kind of validate those thoughts and those feelings and give you some direction, I think is really, really pivotal.
Yeah. Kind of bringing together kind of what you were saying too, is when we started this podcast, even it was just trying to hustle and try to find all of the pieces of information that you could and just kind of scrap together what you could find out and get it all. And kind of how you started your business thing too is kind of how the studio got started. Is we went through all of this stuff. We figured out how to do it. Even though we're only going to be like on episode number 15, we've done it already. We have all of the stuff here already. So, and I found the value, and I know Chris has found the value of having a podcast and the people that you can reach if you do it the right way. And I think it's powerful for other businesses too. Just a small plug for ourselves. If start a podcast. I mean, because it's the best way to reach people. And I bring it up mostly to bring up your podcast and what that means to you and why you started to do that.
Yeah. So I had a podcast with my friend Catherine called Heart and Soul for several years. We started that in, I think like early 2019, and we did it together for 2.5 years. And our mission with that, we were both kind of in a stage in our life and career where we were building multi-passionate businesses and doing a whole bunch of things. We were both still in the fitness industry at the time and wanted to just share stories of like breakthrough and talk about body image and like health and wellness, but also like have fun and talk about pop culture and things like that too. And I don't know if I think things have just changed in the podcast world in general, because now so many people have a podcast. Yeah. I still think there's room for everybody. Don't get me wrong. But for whatever reason, it did so well really, really quickly. And we built it in a very short amount of time. Yeah. And it was so awesome, like how impactful it was. I got a lot of wedding clients from it. She got a lot of training clients from it. We had like such a community. We'd get amazing emails and like run into people in town. My husband would always be like, oh, I met someone else who listens to your podcast today. And we just really saw how powerful it was in having this like longer format medium to share stories and influence and impact people's lives, you know? And so after doing that a couple of years, we just kind of started to get to a place where our businesses were building and kind of niching down separately. So she owns a training studio for women in the area that's all about like shameless living and owning the skin you're in and just having a comfortable place to move. Yeah. And then I kind of went down the motherhood realm of things, and we just decided it was not like ill will at all, but like I kind of wanted to start talking about more birth and motherhood transition, postpartum, all that stuff. And she wanted to niche down a little bit more into that. So she decided to hang on to that podcast, and I started Milestone Mama as a way to continue supporting my clients and allow them to share their stories and just broaden that reach even further. So we have women come on and share their birth stories. I'll have different professionals come on to talk about things like pelvic floor health or mental health and motherhood or whatever it might be, time management and motherhood. And that's been another fun way to connect and continue to reach more and have more impact and just share important stories and give people a platform to share them too.
Right. Have you noticed too, the more that you do coaching and bringing people on your podcast, the more that you're learning as well? Because one of the things that I've always been told and what I've found for myself too, is the more you teach people, the more in-depth and detailed your trade becomes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm challenged in new ways all the time because even with my coaching clients, like they all have their own unique paths and their own set of like obstacles that come up that sometimes will even trump me. And I'll be like, okay, how can I support you in getting through X, Y, and Z? So it's kind of a lot of weight to hold and a lot of space to hold for people, but it's so worth it. And I've loved truly every minute of it. It's been amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Nice. So because you're juggling so many things as a mama and a business entrepreneur and a coach, me as a new kid on the block trying to expand outside of just retail. Yeah. What do you use to do your time management? Do you use like Google Cal? Do you use a bullet journal? Like how do you organize your things? Because I know there's a whole lot of things going on in that head.
There is. And that's a really good question. I use the heck out of Google Calendar. So that runs my life in terms of like things that are actually happening at certain times. So portraits and podcast recordings, when I have my babysitter, all that type of thing. And it's all color coordinated and everything. And then I am very much still like, I write things down too. And I could never find a planner that worked really well for me. So I ended up making my own for photographers that had a place for keeping track of all the sessions and the different stages of, culling it, editing it, delivering it to the client sort of thing. And then creating a content calendar of like, okay, I've got this going on this month. I have this event. I have these offerings I'm trying to launch. And therefore I'm going to make these types of Instagram posts, these types of email blasts, these types of blogs and things like that. And I put it together in Canva and had it printed. And I actually gave them out to some of the ladies that came to our photography retreat this year. So nice. Maybe it'll be something I actually bring to fruition one day. But that's just a plug to like, if you can't find a system that necessarily works perfectly for you, you can always create it too. Nice. But Google Cal is life for sure.
Brittany and I can help you if you would decide to go further with the calendar and everything. We actually made something when we were in retail all together.
Did you?
Oh yeah, we went through that whole learning process of what paper to use, what kind of binding mechanisms, and all that fun stuff. So
I will take you up on it. I've had so many people ask me about it, and I'm like, the company that I used to print these was just like kind of a magazine sort of thing, and it's not like coiled, which I would prefer. And the margins of it were just, it wouldn't make sense for me to like actually sell it as a product right now. So I need to figure all that stuff out.
Yeah. Brittany did all the design for it. And then when we were first thinking about launching it, before we started going on a different venture, I was binding them myself and like handing them out to people. So I know it very intimately at this point.
Yeah. We'll have to talk about that.
You still never gave me one.
I didn't.
Bummer.
Oh, I have an extra one. So you can change the year on it.
No, I'm picking on you.
What's probably your most favorite part of what you do besides being a mom, of course? Because I assume that comes as number one and then wife, like number two, or vice versa.
Oh gosh. I guess I'll talk about it separately from like my portrait clients versus my coaching clients. With my coaching clients, it's so rewarding when I see them, one, just like gaining the confidence in themselves with things as simple as charging their worth based on their cost of doing business. And then they actually book those sessions or those packages and they're like, oh my gosh, I did this. I accomplished this for myself. Or they realize the systems and things that we put in place give them hours of their time back that they can spend with their family or their kids or whatever it might be. Like that is my why for coaching, because it's so easy to get sucked into hustle nonstop as a solopreneur. And it's easy to have constant imposter syndrome for doing what you do and charging your worth and all of that. For my portrait clients, I just love the relationship I develop with them. With almost all of my clients, especially the ones who do milestones with me, become close friends, and we share very openly with each other. And the times where I'll deliver images and moms like cry from how beautiful they are and how much they treasure those real life moments that go by so fast, that just means everything.
That's really neat. Yeah, I think it kind of builds into your why. And I think that's really important for especially someone like you that has so many ideas and does so much. Having that fire that keeps on burning for you probably really helps kind of get you up in the morning.
Yeah, it's kind of my two whys put together. I've experienced what it feels like to have a baby and blink and they're almost 2. And then I've also experienced trying to build a business from the ground up so that I can enjoy this season of his life. Right. So it all just kind of comes full circle.
I like that. So if you've listened to any of our podcasts, I always ask some really silly question. And I feel like right now is a good one. You say you're from New York.
Yeah.
I was waiting for this question.
You knew this was coming?
Yeah.
What part of New York?
Long Island. So I grew up in Coram/Port Jeff Station area. Yeah.
Yeah, I always forget how long Long Island is. Like, I always think, I'm like, oh, it's a joke. It's called Long Island. No, that thing is like hours.
Yeah.
Like, I knew a girl. She's from Rocky Point.
Okay.
And I'm like, it's the only thing I know on the island.
Have you been?
No.
Yeah. Every time I go back there now, I'm like, I'm never moving back to New York. When I moved here as a 14-year-old, I very much was like kicking and screaming, did not want to move here. Yeah. Like your idea, when you grow up in New York, your idea of the South is pretty much farmland and like nothingness. You just think life doesn't exist outside of New York.
Yes.
And so when my parents were like, we're going to move to Raleigh, I was like, no, like all my, middle school, all my friends, and it was very dramatic. And then I remember I came down here hesitantly and spent a little time. And then my first visit back up there, I was like, why is everyone so mean to me? Like, what did I do? And I just very quickly realized, okay, this is just a different world, different culture altogether. So I very much have acclimated to the Southern ways and the Southern life and much prefer it here now.
You claim it down here now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm from PA.
Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of family from PA. And you guys are the only ones that say PA, by the way.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, the rest of us say Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Right?
I mean, I would say Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone who's outside of actual Pennsylvania says Pennsylvania. And if you're from there, you say PA.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's way too many syllables for us.
My grandma and aunt and cousins all lived up in the Poconos, so we would visit there pretty often when we were up there. And they all slowly moved down south, so they all literally live in like the same area now, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
You get sick of the snow up there pretty fast.
That's what I hear. It's snow and like the fast pace. I feel like that's part of the reason when people are quote unquote mean in New York. It's because they're moving at such a fast pace that they're like, I don't have time for Southern pleasantries.
Yeah, literally.
Like you come here and like we were talking about this at work the other week of like the difference between like a a high end experience that people expect and what they get. Because like in the South, it's a totally different experience. You're supposed to like take time, you know, be nice, offer this and this. And then up north, my friend was like, I mean, they're going to offer you that, but they're not going to like coddle you. Mm-hmm. And then if you go to Europe, which is where all of our stuff is coming from, it's a whole nother. If you took the European experience and brought it here, they would look at you and be like, you are crazy.
Yeah. I mean, even things as simple as asking for your check to be split up north. They're like, heck no. And that was like, that's just standard down here.
Yeah.
Oh, just somebody just pays for it outright?
Yeah. You just like, I guess Venmo each. I don't know what they did, what we even did when that wasn't a thing, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like an act of Congress up there. Like,
It is.
you want me to do what? It's like, I don't know, you figure it out on your own damn self. Like,
I'm like, that makes sense too. I'm like, if you're all going out as a group to dinner, it's like, yeah, one person's paying the check and you go someplace else. Somebody else is getting the check.
Yeah. Also, I was a waitress for a little while in college, and I understand like it was usually a pain in the butt to have to do it, especially because most of the time we had to get our manager like approve it, and we have to get everyone's thing on the right check, and there would be like 15 people at a table. So I get it, but like, you know, it's also not that difficult of an ask.
It could be worse.
Yeah, exactly.
So my second silly question, do you actually drink sweet tea? Do you drink iced tea or sweet tea?
What is your definition? Is iced tea unsweet tea to you?
Depends on where you're from. If you're from PA, iced tea is unsweet.
that's right.
But since you've adopted down here, so I just didn't know.
Yeah, I'm not really a huge sweet tea person, to be honest. I was when we first moved down here because it was like new and an anomaly, you know?
Yeah.
But now, if I'm going to get it, I at least get 50-50, half unsweet, because it's just too much for me.
I'm in the same boat. Yeah. I came down here. I was like, I want all the sweet tea. I want all the sun drop, all the cheer wine, all of the things that I never had before.
Yeah.
And then like after a year of that, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
None of
I got a little burnt
again.
out on it. Cheer wine, I cannot do. I'm sorry. Cheer wine is nasty to me. It tastes like cough syrup. I was never able to do it, but that's just me. I know people love it.
I mean, I can't argue with that. I feel like I heard a story like cheer wine, I'm pretty sure came from like a pharmacy or something.
Probably
And that
did.
explains like
Makes sense.
the
It
flavoring.
tastes like medicine. I don't know. Like the cough syrup you used to have as a kid, you know, like cherry flavored or whatever.
I didn't
That's what
get
I
sick,
think.
so I
Look
just
at
didn't have
Well,
to.
lucky you.
Because I grew up, I was a true millennial. I had to be outside and got beat up. No, I'm kidding. Not true.
Oh, that's
Good.
funny.
It kind of goes back. The question I have kind of goes back to what you've brought up throughout the podcast so far. And I notice a lot of women, especially our age, bring this up. And as a man, I get it out of context clues, but I don't really understand what you're saying. And where I'm going with this is when you say season of life.
Yeah.
So I see you say it in Brittany and some of the other like women that I follow and whatnot. They talk about seasons of life. What exactly is that, if you could put that into a definition?
Oh gosh. That's an interesting, I've never like thought of it from a male perspective being any different. I think maybe as females, we just kind of view our like the, I guess, what is the word I want to say? Like the core piece of like what's happening in our life right now. Like I would consider when I was just like dating my husband as a season of life, and like, you know, in the early stages of my career,
Yeah.
that felt like a season. And then we were engaged, and that felt like another season. And then we were pregnant, and that was another season. I don't think there's a real definition to it per se, but I think it's like whatever main focus is, like whatever your biggest priority is in that season of, or that time period,
Right,
you
yeah.
know, like it might be a season of life where you are building towards a promotion or reaching a certain point in your career, or a season where you're growing your family, or moving to a new city, or whatever it might be. I guess I just think of it in chapters in my mind in that way.
I could see that. Yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. Because when I would see, like, for instance, like Brittany saying like, oh, this season of life, or when she would say it, I would think like, is that just like a time period? Like what makes it that season? But you did it very well, like good job of kind of explaining that of why it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that being a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
But
See, you say season. In my head originally, it was like fall, winter, summer.
Yeah.
And then I saw a TikTok the other week that was like, what if, because your life is like a TV show. Like there's different seasons. So at the end of the season, something else happens, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it transitions you to a new section. And then you end up with a spinoff. And that's like you left Long Island, you moved down here. This is a spinoff.
Exactly. That's a good way of putting it. And seasons of TV series usually are about like a year or so time span, which kind of goes along with this. But yeah, that's funny because it just goes to show, I feel like there's this, maybe it was like a sermon or something I heard or some book that they talk about how men, like your brain is like a file cabinet where like everything's very compartmentalized, and ours is just like you just take out all the folders and throw them all over the floor and like pick up what you get. You know?
My wife talks about that all the time. I think she was going through it was a nursing school, I think, is when she learned about this, that men have waffle brains and women have spaghetti brains.
Yep.
So you have a little section of your waffle that men put it in there and it stays in there and it never like spreads out. And then women's like spaghetti. And when you pick up one piece, you're picking up like 5 others.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a perfect way of putting it. We'll never know what the other is like.
Right.
Gosh, that's crazy. I always compare it to like when I go to work, I have the coworkers who always leave up 18 tabs. And then I come up and I go, close. Open up one new tab.
I will say that gives me extreme anxiety. Like I'm not that type of.
You're not the multi-tabber?
No.
Okay.
I can have maybe like 3 Macs open at a time before I start feeling like my blood pressure rise. Yeah.
That's typically how I am. But if you look at my laptop right now, it's a mess. But
No, I'm not even surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going over a lot of stuff today. So
if my desktop gets a lot of stuff on it too, like it immediately needs to be put into folders. But that's kind of more just like the type A personality of me, probably more than a female thing.
No, yeah, I get that too, especially at work. Like, if I have too many things out there, it has to be.
Yeah.
No, I start getting anxiety. It's like,
Too
all this is going on.
Too much, yes.
I guess I'm a type C.
None of the above.
Yeah. I can't
bit
have a
everything.
ton of mess, but like I have folders. But then if you look at my desktop, there's like one folder all the way over here. And then there's like 2 of them that aren't perfectly aligned.
Yep.
And I'm like, some type A person is going to come over here and just rearrange everything. And that's why I have 2 monitors. So you can look at the one that doesn't have anything on it.
I know, like my husband has 3. He has his 2 monitors and then his laptop in the middle. And, you know, we share an office. I've got my one big Mac desktop. And he'll have a million things going on at once, too. He's, like, listening to a podcast over here, and he's got all these other tabs. And some of it's just part of his workflow.
Right.
Like, he legit has to do that. But I'm like, you've got to one thing at a time. It's giving me anxiety just, like, listening over here and, like, watching. But that's just how he works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that. One of the main questions I wanted to ask you, too, but I wanted to wait later on in the podcast to ask, is the second to last question, now that I think about it.
Okay.
But where did you get your entrepreneurial spirit from?
Oh, I guess my parents, but
Okay.
I weirdly, like they were never entrepreneurs when I was growing up. I always kind of had this entrepreneurial bug. My mom tells me that I would constantly be playing store and like doing all these new things and ideas and like having different lemonade stands and all that. And I actually, when I was about, I want to say like 11 or 12, I grew up at an equestrian. So I like rode horses competitively, and my dad always had a really nice DSLR camera. And so I would ask him to borrow it, and I would take it with me to the horse shows around Long Island, and I would take like action shots, like sports action shots of people horse showing. And I started my own website, and I was like selling them, and I would like cover the news of the horse shows and put it on my little free website when I was 12. And then that was like less cool as you start going into middle school and high school. So I kind of let that part slide. And then, you know, I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up and in school, the photography, creative world, entrepreneurship, even in general, just never felt like it was pushed or like that it was even an option, you know? It was like you go to school, you do this major, and then you get into this career path, and this is what you can do with it.
Yeah.
I even had a whole class in college one day about like, here's all the things you can do with an exercise science degree. And here I am not using it anymore. But anyway, I kind of just stuffed all of that because I thought that I needed some linear path based on the degree that I was pursuing. And I put so much pressure on myself for that. And then my parents ended up opening up their own store after my dad got laid off from a job that he had for 20-something years. And I saw the way that they did that and the way that they built community and collaborated, and it was really inspiring. And so I guess picked up from where I left off as a kid once I got that new spark again.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of having that new catalyst of like, you know what, I can do this on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think things have just shifted in the last, 10 years or so, probably even less, to be honest, that there's just so much more opportunity for things like this.
Absolutely.
With social media and the internet, and how, even since COVID, how much has pivoted. I hate saying that word again, but it's the cool part of it is people have come to realize there's so much room and opportunity to create a business or a life that works best for you.
Yeah. I guess if there was one good thing that came out of COVID more than anything is the community that people were able to build if you were willing to go out and find it and look for it.
Yeah, for sure.
I know for us, that's been huge. That's how this podcast got started, really.
Yeah.
So I think there's always a light somewhere.
For sure. There's plenty of silver linings, I think, to come out of it.
Exactly.
It sucked, but I'm okay with some of the things that were a byproduct.
Absolutely. I was talking to one of my friends last night, and we were discussing that too. And he was like, how did you do all of this during a pandemic? And I was like, well, honestly, it gave me more opportunity for this because it brought out so much stuff. Like if you decide to sit back and look at it as this big downer, then your life's going to be a downer. If you want to say like, hey, you know what? This is a new season of life.
Yeah.
I'm going to make the best of it. And that's what I did. So, and I think a lot of people like you found the same thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Even, there's downsides to it too, but like my husband is now able to work a remote job and be home raising our son, and it works so well for our lifestyle. If I need to like scoot out real quick for a session right at 5:00, we can do that, and he's already there, you know? So it's been a blessing more than not, I think.
Definitely. We're starting to come up on our time, but I have to ask one last question. If you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Such a loaded question.
I know, right?
I think getting back to what I was saying about the pressure that I felt growing up and like in school and what our options were, I would tell myself, take everything in stride and not to worry so much about a path that's so linear, because there's so much more opportunity, and there's going to be lessons in each new chapter that you can take with you, and then change your mind if you want to, and it's going to be okay. One of the things that I struggled with a little bit when I took my business full time was, oh my gosh, I just put in so many years of like striving for these grades and getting this degree. And I got like, I don't even know how many certifications and different coaching styles and teaching Zumba and all, everything that you can think of. And I was like, I'm just going to let all that go to waste. And I realized it's not going to waste. Like there's so many parallels and all the things that I learned in that part of my life that have translated so well to what I do now. Yeah. Coming into a room and teaching a fitness class of 50 people who feel vulnerable and like they don't know what they're doing, or maybe they're not comfortable in their body. I'm still kind of in that same boat when I put someone in front of a camera and they're in that same vulnerable, type of state.
Right.
And so it just was a natural progression. So if you can look for those lessons, then each one is just going to propel you to the next stage.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I like that a lot. Good way to kind of take what you have and doing the best with it, and knowing that ability's out there.
Absolutely.
I like it. I don't think I have any other fun questions.
Sounds good.
I liked your fun questions though.
He keeps it interesting in here.
He's a serious one. I'm the goofball.
It's balanced.
I was going to say, exactly. That's why we needed it.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to keep you from your family too long on a Sunday because that's when we're recording this one today. But wanted to thank you so much for coming in again. I really appreciate it and sharing some of your wisdom with us today.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone that is listening. Please share this podcast if you enjoyed it or if you know someone that can get some benefits out of it. We have our link tree on almost all of our social media, so you can go there to find us. Our Buy Me a Coffee is also there if you want to help out that way. Thank you so much for listening this week. Thank you again, Chelsea, for coming on. We'll see you next week.
Cheers.